Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show today. I'm really glad you could join us. So today we're talking about a topic that I really disbelieve that we've never talked about today so far because it's blown up, which is Airbnb. So with us today is Brian Page. Now, Brian actually became a millionaire in his 20s as a residential real estate investor, only to lose it all in the historic crash of 2008. I obviously can relate, as many of you know. Starting over with no credit or ability to buy property, Brian discovered a way to use other people's properties to earn income. He went on to make six figures in 6 months and over $300,000 his first year renting and listing properties on Airbnb. Now, realizing that no one at the time was teaching how to build and scale an Airbnb business, Brian created a training called the BNB Formula. His masterclass is now the world's best-selling Airbnb training, where he has taught thousands of people from 38 countries how to build 6 to 7 figure Airbnb businesses, with several of his students now doing over 1 million in bookings. So Brian has worked with heavyweights like Tai Lopez, Mike Dillard, Kevin Harington, Graziosi and Grant Cardone, has been featured in Forbes, Entrepreneur, and Inc. magazine. He's passionate about helping people create new sources of income and become financially free. So Brian, thanks for joining me, man.
Thanks, Ty. I'm glad to be here. Appreciate it.
I'm kind of ashamed that I've never had anybody on here to talk about Airbnb, but I think it's because, like you said, I don't know of anybody out there. You're the first guy I've ever met that actually teaches people how to do this.
Yeah, there aren't really a lot of people that do. There's a few people now that are getting into the space, but I was surprised myself because I was already doing Airbnb for a while before I decided to teach it. And I went online and started trying to watch YouTube videos and just anybody that could teach me how to scale my business. And there was nobody teaching it. So I thought, well, maybe there's an opportunity here.
Yeah, and it's interesting because what you're talking about, it sounds like, is a lot of ways to do this without owning your own property. So I'm really interested in diving into that because it might not be as cash intensive as some of the other startup ventures that are out there.
Yeah, well, I have nothing against owning properties. It's just that when I came out of the big crash in '08, I had no desire to get back into being a landlord or owning property or going into debt again. I was kind of done with that. So I was looking for an alternative way to do it. And what I found is a lot of people want to be real estate investors, but they can't for various reasons, or they're not willing to take the risk to buy property. And it's just a much more elegant way to make cash flow and to make money. And quite frankly, you don't need to own the property. So I have nothing against owning, but the way I teach it is you simply control the property and turn it into your own income producing asset.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit about that because I'm really interested in what this formula is. So what's really the first step in enjoying, massive cash flow without owning your own property through Airbnb?
Well, there's two main ways that I teach to do this. The first way is that you're going to partner with the owner. So you're essentially offering the owner a service. So I say, hey, Ty, I see you got a property here for rent that's on Craigslist or in the local paper. I want to help you make more money with that property. In fact, you're asking $1,000 a month. I think I could make you $1,500 a month with that same property with no extra work on your part. Would you be interested in hearing how to do that? And of course, you're going to say yes. And I would say, well, I'm going to put on Airbnb, and we're going to split any of the profits that we make above and beyond the $1,000 a month that you're asking for in rent. And you could quite easily make somebody $1,500 or $1,700 a month on that property. So that's how you partner with owners. The second model is where you control the property through a lease. And I love leasing properties, even though it commits me for a year, because I have full control over that property. I get written permission from the owner. I turn around, take that $1,000 a month property and make $3,000 or more on Airbnb, and I get to keep all the profit. So there's two main models. There's two main ways of doing it. One way requires some money, and the other way requires no money at all, which is partnering.
Okay, so the money avenue is the leasing, because if they're going to want a down payment of some sort to be able to get that going, right?
They're going to need first month's rent. They're going to need deposit. And then if it's not furnished, you're going to have to furnish it. Although I try to focus on furnished properties primarily. So you are going to come up with a few $1,000s there, but compared to any other real estate method of making money, it's such a small amount of money to start something that's going to make you, potentially thousands of dollars every month on one property. So you can get your money back very quickly on the investment. But a lot of people that are starting with nothing at all, because I started with nothing at all. I had just a room in my 2-bedroom apartment that I was renting. I started with nothing, saved up the money from that one little room, and then got my first lease and kind of built from there.
Okay. So I want to talk about both of these avenues, and it's easy to talk to somebody that has a topic that I'm really personally interested in, because I'm going to ask all the questions I could do to actually get this thing off the ground. So if you're leasing from somebody, then let's say that you go ahead, you sign the lease, you need first class security. You talk about furnishing it. Would you use a staging company for that, or do you actually physically go buy all the furniture for that property?
No, I buy all the furniture, but what I do is I teach people how to do it very inexpensively. So I never buy new. I buy gently used furniture. I do buy new mattresses and new sheets, of course. I'm not going to be disgusting, but we go with used, gently used furniture. And nowadays you can get stuff so cheap because there's apps like OfferUp, there's Facebook Marketplace, there's all these apps now where you can make stupid low offers on a nice couch or a nice dining room table, and you don't have to spend much to furnish these at all. And I started with studios and one bedrooms. So imagine furnishing a studio. It's not hard. You're talking about a bed, 2 nightstands, maybe a couch if it would even fit in there. I mean, just the basics, right? Just like you'd see in a hotel room. So it doesn't cost a lot to furnish a small unit. But a lot of markets in the US, you can find furnished properties. They may cost more per month, but they're totally worth it because you can take the keys of the property and the very next day put on Airbnb and start making money.
All right. Well, so in these cases, every lease I've ever seen, they don't want you to sublease, right? Or they don't want you to sub it. They don't want you to turn around a lease to somebody else, let alone an Airbnb. So how do you get around that?
Okay, well, there's a couple of different ways. First of all, let's talk about subleasing. When you take a property and put it on Airbnb and you have paying guests staying in the property, that is not actually subleasing. It's no more subleasing than if you stay in a hotel and you give the hotel money, you're not subleasing the hotel room. You have guests coming in the property, yes, but a sublease is a legal document. So since there's no legal document being signed by anybody that's staying on Airbnb, there is no sublease. So first of all, that's a big misconception. It's not subleasing. Secondly, we are going to get written permission from the owner. So we're not doing any sneaking around. We're not doing something that the owner is not aware of. We're getting it in writing that the owner says, Brian has the right to take this property, list it on the home sharing sites, and make money with it. And I understand I'm not going to make any more than I normally would for just the market rent. And now, are all owners going to do that? No, absolutely not. But we don't need all owners to do it. We just need one owner a month, one over every couple months to say yes to this, where we can start building a big portfolio of properties.
Okay. So the idea here is that you're going to mass hit people with properties for rent. In this example, let's just keep it simple and say that these are all furnished properties. You're going to hit them all. You're going to tell them up front, look, this is what I'm really looking to do. Do you tell them I'm looking to stay here part of the time and Airbnb the rest? Or look, this is straight up business. I'm just going to Airbnb this thing.
No, I'd rather get all the truth, ugly truth out in front and tell it to them up front so that there's no later on they're upset. So I totally fully get them on board. But what I try to do is I tell them, look, I am the best option you have for a tenant. You're looking to fill this unit, right? You got this unit, you're advertising it, you're actively looking for a tenant. I am the best tenant that you could possibly lease this property to. And let me explain why. First of all, I'm going to take care of your property. Anything that breaks on the property under $100 that breaks on the property, I'm going to fix it and never call you about it. Now, why would I offer the owner that? Well, because I'm making money on this property. If I'm making a couple $1,000s a month on it, does it matter to me if every once in a while I got to fix something? No, it does not matter. So I'm going to be less hassle to you as the owner, and I'm going to pitch you like you're the owner, Tai. So I'm going to take care of minor maintenance. I'm going to insure your property. So if anybody were to ever sue you, if anybody were to ever, God forbid, get hurt, if something were to happen and damage your property, you're going to have a secondary insurance policy on the property, because you can get these really cheap nowadays. You can get a short-term rental insurance policy really cheaply. So I'm going to insure you for any kind of damage that's going to happen. Beyond that, I'm going to keep your property in the best condition it's ever been in, because every single week, 3 times a week, a cleaning company, professional cleaning company, is going to come into your unit and clean it top to bottom, because it has to be kept at that standard in order to have my guests happy with the place they're staying in. So you will never see your property in cleaner condition than that's going to be with me. Above and beyond that, you can come in the property anytime you like, because between guests, I'm going to have times where there's no guests in there. You can come in and check it out. And so there's all these benefits. You're working with a professional. You're not working with a normal person off the street. And none of the wear and tear that you get with a traditional tenant, you're going to have with me. So there's not going to be any pets in the property, because my guests don't have pets. I don't allow smoking in the property, so there's no smoking. You're not going to have somebody putting a satellite dish on the roof without permission, or painting the 3rd bedroom pink, or, all the crazy things, right? A car on blocks in the driveway, all the crazy things that happen with tenants. None of that stuff happens with Airbnb guests. And beyond that, all the guests are screened. I have their credit card on file. I have their passport. I have their license. I know who these people are. They're not people, people just paying cash to stay in this. These are people that have already been vetted by Airbnb, so I know who they are. So I kind of go through that spiel. And when the owner's done, they're like, wow, okay, this is like a good deal. And if they don't say yes to the offer that I just presented to them, then I can always pay them more. So if you're asking,
your last resort is just to offer them more money for the consideration.
Yeah. My last resort would be, okay, if I know in my mind this $1,000 unit might be worth $3,000 on Airbnb, does it matter if I pay $1,100 to you? No. And you're going to be like, wow, you're going to pay me more. I had one owner that was like, really? You're going to pay me more? I was like, sure, I'll pay you $11.50 for your $1,000 unit. So that's kind of how I pitch the owners. And I just meet with people that already have places for rent. So you're just trying to essentially sell them on the idea that you're the best choice for them. And then once they say yes, you sign the contract, you put it on Airbnb, immediately start creating cash flow for yourself. And even if you're only filling 60% of the nights in a month, you're going to be very, very profitable doing this.
Okay. So how do you go for 1-year leases?
I do, because most owners require a year lease. Some will do 6 months. But I like to go with 1-year lease renewable, where I get the first right of refusal to renew it every single year. And then I always renew because I don't, I'm making money. So why would I not renew?
Well, that's why I wondered if you do 2, 3, 5-year leases to give them an incentive as a result, or.
I don't, because anything in business can change. So I don't want to commit myself any longer than I have to. And the owners love me, so they always want to renew. I mean, the owners usually have the same comments. They're like, wow, this property's never been nicer and better condition than it is with you. And I love this. So yeah, it's just a matter of getting people on board and then creating that cash flow. And it allows basically somebody who's a total amateur that doesn't have any property to, within 30 days, start creating a new cash flow source in their life. And it's not something you got to work for. It's cash flow. And it comes in again and again and again. And then you can start scaling the business. And that's the real power in it, is getting multiple properties on the site. And when you get about 4 to 6, maybe 7 properties, you're well above 6 figures a month, 6 figures a year net. And I have many, many, many students that are doing over 6 figures, multiple 6 figures, $300,000, $400,000 a year net in their pocket with properties they don't own.
You're the problem with doing podcasts like this, man. You tell me all this stuff and I'm like, dude, I'm immediately going to go do that, because I mean, it's just brilliant what you're doing. So let's look at the other side of this. Then on the other one, if you're just going in and saying, look, let me lease it and I'll split profits with you. What do you do in that circumstance where they don't have furniture in the property? Do you make them pay it? Do you still pay it? How does that work?
Well, there's a couple different ways you can do it. First of all, we're going to look for furnished properties if we're partnering with the owner, because I'm going to assume that anybody that's going to partner with an owner is only doing it because they have no money, because you're going to make less doing that, right?
Okay,
you're going to make money, but you're going to make less. But if it's not furnished, one of my students came up with this idea and I thought it was brilliant. What she does is she gets paid to stage properties. So she tells somebody, look, in order to make this work, in order to make you more money, you have to invest into furnishing your property. And I'll be happy to furnish it for you and stage it out and design it and all that kind of stuff. But you got to pay me my fee of $3,000 and then pay for the furnishings. And she makes $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 for every house she stages, that she then turns into her own cash flowing Airbnb unit. And then she splits the revenue with the profit with the owner. So she makes money on the front end because she loves decorating. So it's kind of cool little side income that she makes with her business. So that's one way to do it. You could also just come out of pocket and put the furnishings in there. But if you're partnering with the owner, it would make sense to look for furnished properties or have them pay for the unit.
Okay. So how do you know how much you're going to get for a property?
You never really do. There is no absolute 100% way to know exactly what you're going to make. But as a general rule, you will make more with short-term than you do long-term. And the reason is very simple. We're just buying wholesale and selling retail. We're buying for a month, $1,000 a month, and we're selling for $150 a night or $200 a night. So we're making more because we're selling in chunks by the night. The same thing hotels do, right? Hotels have a mortgage. They make money by selling those rooms by the night. It's no different than that. But you kind of have a general idea that you're going to make 200 to 300% more than the rent. So as a general rule, if you have a $1,000 unit, you're going to make $2,000 to $3,000 a month on Airbnb. Now you do have to pay for utilities, so that may be a few $100s coming out of your pocket. But you're still talking about, on the low side, creating something that can give you $800, $900 a month. On the high side, $2,000 a month. And I'm talking about a typical one-bedroom. So it's very, very lucrative. I mean, you're talking about something that you can make $12,000 a year easily on with almost nothing out of your pocket. And you don't have to do that one time. You can do that multiple times across multiple properties.
Is Airbnb as simple as just putting the property up there? Can you pay for featured listings? I mean, what's your success strategy there?
It's not that simple. The thing is, there are millions of people using Airbnb. It's nothing new, but most people have no clue how to optimize their listings to get more clicks, to get more bookings. It comes down to things like your photos, how you stage the property, the kind of furnishings you put in it, the way that you communicate with your guests, the pricing strategy. I mean, there's all these things. And I teach all these things, by the way. If you don't have those things dialed in, you're going to make a lot less. So I'll give you an example. I have a unit in a building. It's a one-bedroom condo, and there's another condo in the same exact building. And I charge $100 more per night on my condo, and I have a higher occupancy rate than I book more nights than the other person does. And there's no difference. They're the same condo. It's just one is not done correctly and mine is. And mine is a showpiece. And when somebody sees that listing, they're like, holy crap, honey, look at this. Let's book this one. And so it's kind of an art and a science to how to do that. But by doing that, we can get our occupancy from the 60, 65 range, which is average, 65% of nights booked, all the way up to 90, 95, 100% bookings. So that's where you make a whole lot more money as you start filling that calendar up. And I teach people how to do that. So that's the critical key. And most people don't know how to do that. And then most people don't know how to scale, because less than like 2% of hosts on Airbnb have more than 2 listings. And really you need to get up into 4, 5, 6, 7 listings to make the really big money if that's what your goal is.
So you're talking about 5 listings being 6 figures a year in net. So that means you're making like $2,000 a month in profit. I mean, roughly per property.
Roughly. Well, let me just do the math here, for example. So $100,000 divided by 12 is $8,333. So let's divide that by 5 properties. That's $1,600. So $1,600 on 5 properties. Now it's going to depend on where you live. I mean, if you live in a place like a big city, for example, you're going to make more per unit. If you're renting $2,500 units, you're going to make a lot more than somebody who's living in the middle of the US in a small town and paying $700 for a 1-bedroom, which you can actually get places that cheap. They're not going to make as much. So it's all relative to the market that you're in. But it doesn't really matter to me whether it takes you 3 properties or 6 or 9, because the way I teach the system, I teach you a formula of how to manage all the properties so you can stack on as many as you want. So you're not having to message the guests. You're not having to clean properties. We don't go in and make beds. We don't do any of that kind of stuff. It's all fully automated so that you can work extremely part-time hours and yet manage your whole portfolio.
Brian, is it that way from the beginning? I mean, from the beginning is what you're talking about, being able to come in, get the company that does the cleaning for you, have somebody else handle all the stuff for you. Is it that way from the beginning, or do you have to kind of segue into that?
It's not that way from the beginning. Most people on Airbnb do a lot of the work themselves. They might not clean the unit. Some people do hire cleaning companies, but they manage the units and the communication themselves. And that's a big mistake, because what happens is when you start getting essentially a little distributed hotel set up, your job now becomes communicating with people all the time. They ask for more towels. They get locked out of the property. They want to know, can they book the property? Can they get a discount? They got to cancel? All these things happen. And it's fine when you have 1 or 2, but when you get a whole bunch of them, it gets to be overwhelming. So that's the problem. That's why most people don't start scaling. And so what I teach you to do and my students to do is to get outside of that and outsource 98% of the business, so they're not managing any of that crap, and then still able to make a really incredible income and paying a couple pennies on the dollar to have somebody else manage it all. And that's what I teach. And that's what I do with my own listings. So it's essentially, I don't talk to my guests. I don't know who's checking in and out of my properties. It's all managed by other people. And so that's what I teach my students to do.
Do you teach them to do that right from the beginning?
No, I don't. And there's a reason. I want people to get experience on how to do Airbnb. How does it work? So in the first 1 or 2 listings, I want somebody to do all of it themselves. And you can do it very part-time. I was working 50 hours a week on my job when I started this, and then I quit my job. But so you can do it very part-time for 1 or 2 listings. But then you want to get somebody on board or a virtual team on board that can then take over the management of those and the next listings that you get. And there's companies, that's all they do now. There's all these companies that service Airbnb where you can pay them a small fee and they will manage all that stuff for you. So I tell you how to get all that hooked up and basically step back. And that's the whole name of the game, is passive income.
So and you think that's a better solution than getting virtual assistants and setting up your own network, is just to work with a company that does all the cleaning, that does all that stuff for you, and just have them manage it?
You could certainly use VAs if you want to. There's a couple different ways to do it. One of them is to hire a VA. There are a lot of VAs that's all they do is manage Airbnbs, which VA stands for virtual assistant, in case anybody doesn't know. And then there's also companies and services that do it. So there's 2 main ways to do it, and I teach you how to do both, so you can choose which one's right for you.
Okay, so then that way, you do the couple, you get it under the belt, you get a feel for what people are asking, how it works. Then you have a couple different solutions going through a virtual assistant or going through another company that manages everything to do with the listing, so you could move on to the next.
Yeah, so basically your job only becomes to go search for more properties and put them into your collection.
But is that really your job? Because it seems to me like that's something real easy for a VA to do themselves.
Well, no, a VA can't do that. A VA certainly can't choose properties for you. They have no idea anything about your market. They can't go look at properties. They can't go meet with owners. I mean, if you're gonna go into a neighborhood in your town and go look at a property that's for rent, you can't send a VA to do that. Your VA might be in, Thailand.
But can you teach a VA to do the research for you to tee up the properties that you want to take a next step for?
No, I don't believe you can. No, that's a skill that you need to learn how to do, because it's like the equivalent would be like if I used to flip houses. It's like saying you're going to hire somebody at $10 an hour to go analyze properties that you could possibly buy to flip. It's just not something that it's not something you want to give to someone else, and it's the most important part of the entire business. And actually, it's a lot of fun. I mean, it's a lot of fun to go get these things and to get them, signed up on Airbnb. It's a lot of fun. And so, you certainly don't want to do that, but it's a very small thing to do. I mean, my average student might add one property every 2 months. So how much time does it take you to find one little rental in your town?
Well, that's what I'm interested in is how difficult this is to do, like how receptive people are to Airbnb, how receptive they are to this idea. Like you have to go through 10 to get to one, or, I guess that's what I'm interested in. Is this one of those things where you're lining up a bunch of them and then you're going through them just to get to the one that'll say yes? Or is this one of the ones where you're finding two and typically statistically one of those two is going to be go forward with?
Well, it's really what you do on the front end. So I teach people how to know if the person they're contacting is somebody they should even go meet with. Because the vast majority of people, you don't want to go meet them. You don't want to waste any time going to see their property. For example, property managers, because they're just a waste of time. Property managers are going to look at you as a threat. You only want to meet with property owners, the person who's the decision maker. And so I show people how to do that. Now, does that mean you're going to bat 1,000% average and you're going to get every single property? No. But if you go look at 5 or 6 properties on a weekend, which is super easy to do, then you're going to probably have one of those people say yes. And some students I've had have gone out and the very first person they talked to said yes. I'm not going to say that happens for everybody, but that does happen. But I would say, if you spend a couple weekends looking at properties and talking to people, you're going to find a property. It's not that complicated. It's not that hard to do. And even if it took you a month, it would be totally worth it, because you're setting up a cash flow for yourself. And cash flow is very different than, quote, making money, doing a deal and then you got to go hustle and do another deal. This is cash flow that you're going to set up for another year or several years in your life. So it's totally worth going out there and making it happen. And you're just talking to people that are already looking for tenants. So people that are already expecting to meet with people at their rental and show it to them on a Saturday or Sunday.
So when you're looking at properties, what are you looking for? Do you have a price range? Do you have a rental amount, sweet spot? I mean, what are you really looking at when you're trying to find a property that fits?
It varies from city to city and market to market. It completely varies. I like little 1-bedrooms and studios, but I've had many students who have done 3- and 4-bedroom houses all the way up to mansions. So just about any kind of property will work, but you want to look at the best location where you live. So if you live in a small college town, by the way, those are very lucrative. You might want to look for units that are near the college, walkable to the college. If you live in an area of the convention center and it's a very popular convention center, you might want to locate your unit near that. If you're at the beach, obviously you want to be near the coast or near an attraction. If you have something special about your property, maybe it's a cabin in the woods in rural Canada. Like one of my students has 5 cabins in the woods. It's not near anything, but he books them all the time because people are looking to escape and go on a vacation in the woods, and he's got 5 cabins. So it's any number of things, and there are many reasons people travel on Airbnb. Just as many reasons that they travel as the reasons people travel and stay in hotels. There's just countless reasons.
I'm surprised down here, you're familiar with Turo, I'm sure, where it's like Airbnb for cars. And I'm surprised down here because in Tampa, the people that own, that own 20 cars on Turo, they're like Ford Escorts. I mean, they're like not high-end cars. They're like very middle of the road cars. So it sounds like in your world, though, you're talking about properties that have some kind of uniqueness to them. They're a 1-bedroom in, a college town. They're on a beach. They're near this. Is that really what you're looking for? Or is, a house like where I live, like in the suburbs, is that not the way to go?
That's a good question. No, those are the ones that I would aim for first, but I have properties myself in a very, very blue collar, low income, for lack of a better word, trashy neighborhood. I've got 2 of them. I bought the cheapest houses in my metro area, and they're absolutely crushing it right now, crushing it on Airbnb. And the reason, and these are 3-bedroom houses, 900 square foot houses. And the reason they're crushing it is because I have the cheapest house in the entire area, bar none. I mean, we're talking $150 a night for a 3-bedroom house. So a family coming in that would have to get 2 or 3 hotel rooms, there's no way that the hotels can ever compete with me. Nobody else on Airbnb can compete with me. Who's staying there? People that need an affordable place to stay for a few nights. So it works in regular neighborhoods. I've got students in the suburbs of Dallas, Texas, and Atlanta, Georgia, in places that are nondescript. I mean, completely nondescript neighborhoods with 3-bedroom houses in huge tract neighborhoods that are doing really, really well. I've actually visited some of these homes and visited some of these students, and they're doing well. And it's like, who goes here? And they're like, I don't know, but the people are booking them. So, so there's countless people every day that are signing up to use Airbnb for the first time, and there's a huge demand, and they're looking for an alternative to hotels. And so that's the demand that we're fulfilling. And like I said, there isn't just one type of property. There's opportunity everywhere for people to take these things and make money with them.
Now, you mentioned a couple that you owned. Is that your strategy now? Do you actually just go physically use your profits to buy the properties versus even mess with these landlord scenario?
I still do all the strategies. Well, I don't do the partnering with owner strategies, but I still do the leasing strategy. And now I'm getting back into acquiring properties again. So I've just been getting into renovating properties and turning them into B&Bs. So I do both of those strategies. So yeah, I mean, I do both sides. I just started doing that recently, acquiring properties again.
One of my buddies does Airbnb, and his new thing is he buys a 3 or 5 Series Beamer and then uses as an upsell with a property to get the car with it.
Wow.
Heard anything like that before?
I haven't. I would worry about the liability with something like that. Is he using, you can't do it through Airbnb. Is he doing it through
No,
Turo?
I mean, to use Turo, so he uses a combination of the two.
That's a great idea.
That, by the way, I deserve a percentage of your cut.
It's a great idea. It's a great idea. I haven't thought about that. I think it's a great idea. I have never looked into that, to be honest.
I thought that was interesting. So I'm like, it makes sense. I mean, they get his house in California, they get a 3 Series Beamer with it. It saves them time, so all they do is get to the house. But okay, so outside of, you go through, you find the property, that's your work. You negotiate with the seller, the person that's going to lease it to you. And then you get it to a VA team that you built or another company that manages it. What happens at that point? Is your hands pretty much washed? Is it minimal management from your part? What kind of involvement do you have in that property from that point forward?
Yeah. I mean, at that point, it's just managing the business, acquiring more properties, if that's what you're looking to do, and scaling. That's really what it comes down to. And there's nuance to that. You're essentially a traffic cop who's going to step in when something goes wrong, but you're not doing anything that could be outsourced.
How many properties is it feasible to scale this to and manage, or is there really no ceiling from what you've seen?
I mean, there's no ceiling. I've had as many as 11 at once, but I've had students that have gone way beyond that. I run multiple companies, not just my Airbnb business. And I also teach. So it's really, there are people that are doing dozens and dozens of properties, millions of dollars a year on Airbnb. So it's really, it's not really capped.
Yeah. That's interesting. And it sounds like, this is something that you could just do indefinitely, at least until Airbnb's around.
Yeah. I mean, I don't see it changing anytime soon. Airbnb's been around for about a decade now. It's not going anywhere. Home sharing is here to stay. And it's an opportunity because we're still pretty early in the phase. I mean, it's still a very, very small percentage of properties that's on home sharing sites. And it's been estimated there's about 1 million people a week that are signing up to use Airbnb for the first time.
That's crazy, man. That's insane. It's like 50 million people a year that are new coming to this.
Now, that's globally, but still, it's an insane number. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Though. I mean, that is where things are going. What about horror stories? I mean, do you have people that get in an Airbnb that you can't get out? Like, obviously that's it with leasing properties, right? The the scenario where you get that tenant in there that refuses to leave, you got to go to court, have them removed. You have any of that kind of stuff at all with Airbnb?
I've never had any issue with that, but a person can't stay in the property because they're not leasing the property. So they don't have any right to it. There is no eviction because they don't have any kind of right to the property. So with a tenant, they have a right to that property, so you have to evict them. But with a guest, you do not. So they could actually be charged with trespassing. Now, I've never heard of that happening to any of my students. It's not happened to me. I never had any horror stories. I've had messy people, but that's just up to the cleaning company to clean up after them. So a lot of the horror stories that you hear with tenants is much more common to happen with the traditional way than with guests.
Yeah, it sounds like it, that like you said, it sounds like the worst case scenario that you've seen is that, people are messy, which you have a cleaning company to handle that anyways.
Yeah. And you can also get the insurance that I talked about. Not only covers for damage, it also covers for loss of income. So if something like that were to happen, you're insured. So if it would take a week or two and something went wrong where you're losing that income, you're covered for income loss as well.
Speaking of loss, what do you do there? Do you inventory the house and have the cleaning company inventory the house to make sure people didn't steal anything while they're there?
Yeah, I go over all that in the training, basically how to inventory it, how to have someone else inventory it. We do all that with the maid service.
So inventory it every time somebody comes and goes to make sure nothing's there. And then if things are missing, what do you do? Just charge them, approach them?
Things can't go missing because they're locked up. Everything's locked up. Unless you're talking about the TV missing or something.
I don't know. I mean, I'm interested. I guess I'm trying to think about, what could happen or what damage people could do in it.
Yeah, we can charge deposits. I mean, you can always charge deposit on Airbnb and keep the money if something happens.
Do you find certain kind of properties are better than others? You said you like to stick with 1-bedroom studios. Do you find beach properties are better? Because the mansion thing seems interesting to me. It just seems like you understand, right? It's in real estate investing. You go from single house to multifamily because you're like, dude, my same work, might as well own one apartment complex versus one property. I would think Airbnb may be the same, where you could make a ton more money with much bigger, more valuable homes than you could like a 1-studio apartment.
You can, but it's not a strategy I recommend starting with. It's a very advanced strategy because you're talking a significant amount of money and a significant liability that you're signing up for if you're going to rent something like that.
Yeah, so you want to start with stuff that's more manageable and then move up from there. And then at that point, you could do one property, which is the equivalent of, multiple properties without having to manage them all.
Yep, exactly.
What are some of the other things that you think people should know about this kind of strategy of getting in? Because it sounds like it's pretty cut and dry. It also sounds like it's perfect for our listeners, a lot of them out there, because you don't really need any money in this to start. I mean, you could start with no money and then get to a point where you're just using the money you get to lease the properties without having to go in and split profits with them. And then even getting to the point where you're making enough to even then buy the properties, which then saves you even more time. And then you've got the appreciation of the property and everything else there. What are the type of things? Go ahead.
Well, I recommend that your viewers come check out my free training. I have a free training that's going to go into even more detail on how I did this and show you my properties, show you how much I'm earning with them, all that kind of stuff. You can check out my free training. It's at thefreetraining.com, thefreetraining.com. And I'll go into detail on all the things we talked about and show you exactly how I did what I did.
What did you say the site was again, Brian?
Thefreetraining.com.
The word THE, freetraining.com?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So www.thefreetraining.com. And then that's where you can kind of get started with learning some of the basics and then getting into this Airbnb formula that you have, which really maps out in depth all the stuff that we just kind of touched the surface of here.
Yeah, I'll take you behind the scenes. I'll show you my account. I'll show you the numbers and how much I'm making on each property and all that kind of stuff, and kind of walk you through the formula of how, basically how I set this up for all these properties.
No, it's really interesting. Anything else that I should ask you that I probably should, that I already haven't regarding this?
Yeah, the toughest question that everybody always asks me, which is how do you deal with the regulations and the laws that are changing around Airbnb? And it's a question I get a lot because Airbnb is not allowed in all locations. It's 8% of cities and towns in the US. You cannot do home sharing Airbnb. It's just either banned or it's very difficult to do. 92% of places you can do. But there are still ways to do it, even if you live in those 8% of cities. And I teach you how to do it without having to break the rules, without having to break the law. And we have students even in those red cities. So I'm going to show you in the training how to do that as well. So you can do this basically anywhere without having to break the rules. So I'm going to show you that as well. That's something a lot of people want to know about.
And that actually led me to one more question, which is a little bit off topic from what you just said, though. Do you want to find properties close to where you are?
When you start, yes. I would say within 45 minutes to an hour drive where you start. But after that, you do not need to. I have many people that are doing units in other states. I have a unit in another state in Arizona, and I live on the East Coast. So there are people doing it. I'm doing it. There are people doing it in multiple countries. You can set these up from really anywhere and then manage them remotely if you do it the way I teach.
Do you have people that then use those properties? Because think about that. If I could do this and I could have an Airbnb in 5 properties that I really want to go visit, then I could almost have a vacation home wherever I want to go as well. Do you have people that think that way and do it that way?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You can stay in the units whenever they're vacant.
Yeah. And so, because that's interesting. I guess there's all kinds of strategies you could develop, whether you stay local, whether you go to a beach property, a city property. I guess there's no set rule of what kind of strategy you develop.
No, but like I said, I'm going to go into all of those details in the training, so I don't want to give them away right now, but I'll go into every single one of those things in depth.
Sounds good, man. Thanks for joining me today. This was fantastic. It opened my eyes to a whole new world that I've never even thought of before.
Sure. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this and got a lot of value out of it. And if you decide to check out that training, I think you'll be really blown away by the opportunity.
All right. Well, thanks again, Brian.
Thanks so much, Ty. I appreciate it.
All right. So everybody listen, go to thefreetraining.com. I'm going to go ahead and put a link to thefreetraining.com right on the web or on the show resources page. The show resources page is at creditsuite.com/podcast. You can find Brian, again, Brian Page. You can find his show right there, but go to thefreetraining.com. I'll put that link in the show resources page as well. And that gives you the basic guide of everything you need, more details than we talked about here, and kind of get you an introduction to this Airbnb formula that Brian's designed. A lot of benefits here, guys. First of all, Airbnb is blowing up, as Brian just said. I mean, nearly 50 million new users every single year. So this isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Been around the decade. This is the where to go, the place to be. And as he just said, there's multiple strategies you can get in here with very little to no money down and be able to start making money in 60, 90 days or less, effectively following the right system. So not a lot of those opportunities where you're in the right place, the right time, things are blowing up in that industry, and then you can get in with basically no money down and then come in and create your own business that could make you six figures in the course of probably a year or more. So how do you do it? We talked about some of the surface stuff here, but make sure you go to thefreetraining.com to get more details and to learn more about Brian's Airbnb formula, where you can come in and you could do this part-time, full-time, and scale this into a six, or even, as Brian has clients or Brian has students, seven-figure business. So make sure you check it out, thefreetraining.com. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.